Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another review video here on the channel. Today, while the dog plays with a squeaky squirrel, we are going to be talking about Aliette De Bodard's A Fire Born of Exile. Some quick disclaimers before we start. I was sent a free digital review copy of this book from the publisher via NetGalley. Regardless of where books come from, nobody's paying me to talk about books and all opinions are my own. I will keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible while still talking about the book as a whole. If you do want to go into this knowing absolutely nothing, pause the video, come back when you've read it, we'll talk then. And lastly, I will link the story graph for the book below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warnings. I would throw in a content warning for an abusive parent-child relationship, if that's not something you like reading. It does feature in this book. This is a sci-fi, space opera, sapphic, romantic book from author Aliette De Bodard. It is part of her Shuya universe, which is her sci-fi universe featuring all sorts of books, most of which will include some exploration of the mind ships, which are kind of sentient people who are also spaceships. I've talked about it a little bit before, I'm not explaining it well now. This book is out on the 12th of October this year. Last year we had The Red Scholar's Wake, which is the other sapphic romance story in this universe. And I have a review up for that if you would like to check it out. Let me read you the plot. However, please excuse all of my pronunciation. I have not heard any of these said aloud. I'm only going off what I think they are pronounced like, and I apologise for my inevitable butchering of the pronunciation. I did look to see if there was a guide, and there wasn't. The Scattered Pearls Belt is a string of habitats under tight military rule, where the powerful have become all too comfortable in their positions and their corruption. But change is coming with the arrival of Cristo, the mysterious and enigmatic alchemist of streams and hills. I will make sure that it is written properly in the subtitles so you can see what I'm attempting to say badly, because my pronunciation is terrible. To Min, daughter of the ruling prefect of the belt, Queen represents a chance for escape. To Hoa, a destitute engineer, Queen holds a mysterious link to her own past and holds a deeper, more sensual appeal. But Queen has her own secret history and a plan for the ruling class of the belt, a plan that will tear open old wounds, shake the heavens, and may well consume her. A beautiful exploration of the power of love, of revenge, and of the wounds of the past, this fast-paced, heartwarming space opera is set against a backdrop of corruption, power, and political scheming in the far reaches of the award-winning Shuya universe. Other than my terrible pronunciation, it is a great plot. We have Sapphic, space, Count of Monte Cristo. Who doesn't love it? Who doesn't love it? I think possibly Count of Monte Cristo might be a negative selling point. If you have picked up that particular book, you'll know it's very long. It's Count of Monte Cristo in the sense that somebody has a revenge plot and love gets in the way. That's what we're talking about here. But it has that core kind of passions of the romance, which is very passionate and wonderful and very fast-moving, and the vengeance, which is very deep-running, and a general sense of things are bad and we must root out the corruption through the power of love and vengeance, and it's a good time. I think having that energy behind the book just felt really powerful, and it helped kind of ignite the book. Not to use a fire pun in A Fire Born of Exile, but it just really felt like it gave it a lot of oomph. I really loved all of the books I've read in the Shuya universe. I have a bunch left to get to, and I think at some point I'd quite like to do it as more of a readathon to actually power through all of them just to get a sense of the connections between the books. And I'll come on to some of why later. But the ones I've read I've really enjoyed, and each one you kind of get the sense that there is a lot going on in this universe, and each book is just scratching the surface of this particular part of the world. So where in Red Scholar's Wake we saw kind of the pirate aspect of it, as well as a quite in-depth look at mind ships, in this it's much more about the people and much more about the class divide of this particular part of the universe, which I personally very much enjoyed. Though there are still mind ships, there are still good mind ship space AI content in here for those who love that. I think for me, the biggest selling point of this particular book is it hits some of my absolute favourite sci-fi tropes, and actually fantasy tropes, just general fiction tropes, I guess. I love a revenge plot. I love a sapphic romance. There's also the narrative about fixing something that is broken, which is one of my favourite things. I love a fixer-upper story. This is not that. This isn't we have a beautiful cafe and we just need to get some customers. This is there is a broken mind ship and we need to heal her. I think because I love characters who have a skill, and Hoa in this case has the skill of being able to fix things and repair things, but the added layer of kind of sentience behind the mind ship stuff just makes it extra powerful. Yeah, I really enjoyed the tropes in this story. I think when a book has romance at its centre, tropes are important, and these were great. I think the other thing I want to mention is Aliette De Bodard's writing. I've talked about this a lot whenever I'm reviewing her work. When I reviewed Dominion of the Fallen, which was one of the very first overbooked videos I ever made, I talked a lot about how not everyone gets on with her writing, and sometimes it can can be a little bit hard to get into. However, once you're in it, it's so good. Her descriptions are like nothing else. Prepare to be hungry while reading this book because her descriptions of food are so fantastic. Food descriptions always get me, but beyond that, the atmospheric descriptions are so great. I really love that we're in a world where people kind of decorate their space through overlays. So it's kind of like almost VR all the time, I guess. The amount of character you can learn when someone has that much control over their environment, it's wonderfully handled. So you get the atmosphere of this place that could be very sterile and sci-fi and just sort of Starship Enterprise corridor kind of thing. Instead, we have this really rich, beautiful world that has loads of description in it and loads of character information as well. And also the more spooky, scary parts of this story, there are some really high tension, kind of scary horror moments. Not full space horror, but getting close to it. They are so well described. I got a little bit freaked out at times. It was a good read, but a little bit scary for me. But I think that's just a testament to how well Aliette De Bodard commands her atmosphere and crafts a setting. I have two things I want to say that made this less good for me. I personally preferred The Red Scholar's Wake. The first is that this took a hot minute for me to get into. I don't know if that's because I hadn't quite grasped the plot before I went in, or, and I don't know if this is the case, if this is referencing something that's happened in a different Shuya Universe book, which is why I need to read them all. But I felt at the beginning like I was missing something, like there was something going on in the story that I wasn't picking up on. There was some backstory that I hadn't quite fully understood, and I just wasn't 100% sure what was going on at all times. I would say maybe around the 150 page mark, so about a third of the way through, maybe just over a third. That didn't bother me anymore. Once I'd grasped what characters were doing and what their aim was, it was fine from there on out, and I just got to enjoy the kind of mystery and the romance and the revenge and all of that. But fair warning, it does take a little bit of time to get into, especially if you, like me, found Red Scholar's Wake not particularly difficult. And the other thing I'll say, which is kind of a continuation of that, is that the ending was a little bit of a jumble for me. I felt like the ending came very quickly, and it all kind of thumped together at the end, technical term, and I probably think this warrants a reread for me, and maybe a reread via audio, as that tends to streamline things that get a little bit confusing for my one brain cell that's ever working. However, overall, I did have a good time reading this. I would recommend it. I just think Red Scholar's Wake is my preference, and this is one that will require a reread, where Red Scholar's Wake did not. What else should you read? Red Scholar's Wake, obviously, if you've not already read that. But other things that I've enjoyed include Winter's Orbit, which is is it a Chilean MLM romance set in space that's very enjoyable. Do check out the content warnings before you pick that up, but it's very good. And maybe The Count of Monte Cristo, which I have actually read, so I can recommend to you. I recommend the audiobook. It's a good time. I preferred it in space, to be honest. It was much shorter in space. I've been reading quite a lot of revenge narratives lately because I've been reading so much Joe Abercrombie, so I should probably say maybe also Joe Abercrombie if you really just like stories of revenge and why revenge is not a good idea. But instead of being sapphic romances, Joe Abercrombie's books tend to be more a kind of here is why revenge is not a good idea and not a virtue you should hold kind of stories, so slightly different, I guess. Should you read A Fireborn of Exile? I think if you've enjoyed Aliette De Bodard's previous works, 100% yes, this continues in that same vein. If you liked Red Scholar's Wake, yes. If you've not read any of her other stuff and you're wondering whether to pick this up, you absolutely can pick this up. I think it is harder to get into without that background knowledge of the Shuya universe. However, there'd be no problem doing it, and I think once you've got past that first hurdle, you would have a very good time. Another 2023 release has a video on the channel. Bam, bam, we're great. Have you read this? Do you have plans to read it? Have you read any of the other books in the Shuya universe that you would recommend? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams, and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much to you for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. What's up? You knew I was filming, so you had to go and scream. Let me throw your toy downstairs.